Welcome to Side by Side, a podcast where I, Robert Kwong, take you inside conversations with artists, creatives, healers, and warriors taking their charge in their transformational story. Today's returning guest is Paul Silva, aka the Creative Alchemist. He's a guide, coach, and collaborator that blends intuition, creativity, and spiritual insight to help multi-passionate entrepreneurs and creatives break through barriers and create meaningful lives and businesses. Through his work, he helps people clarify their ideas, navigate creative blocks, and move from stuck to in motion with curiosity, discipline, and presence. When he's not coaching, Paul is exploring the world through photography, video, writing, and storytelling, bringing a key eye for detail and a deep appreciation for the messy, rewarding process of creating. In this conversation, we talk about embracing change and life chapters from a place of leadership, lessons from Paul's sobriety, and the ever-evolving journey of a creative. You can find more side-by-side episodes at sidebysidepodcast.podbean.com. And if you'd like to connect with me about my services, please visit www.robertquanhome.com. Okay, so this is a returning guest. I'm so happy to be bringing back and inviting Paul Silva back. We had connected randomly, spontaneously when I reached out to you after finding your online presence, as we've sort of been in each other's orbit ever since. And I know a lot of life and time has happened since we last connected. So it's great to have you back, Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. It's always a delight just being in your energy. It's such a cozy place, and it just feels so expansive. So thank you.
You know, we were just catching up a little bit before we started recording. And one thing that sort of organically changed since we last spoke is I'm now in your territory. Because last time I spoke, I was in New York. You know, you're from Toronto. And now I'm based in Vancouver, starting this new chapter. And so that was on my mind today when I was like, oh yeah, last time I spoke with Paul, we were sort of had like greater distance, although it's still very far away. But now things are a little bit different. I'm talking to quote unquote fellow Canadian to me in some ways in spirit. Yeah, that's sort of what I'm present to. But how's life been for you?
Oh, it's, well, first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
This is a tariff-free conversation. So it has been a bit of a ride and a good one. It's been challenging, like I was sharing before we recorded, stepping into another level of asking and answering the question, exploring the question, like, who am I? Not where am I to be, but how am I to be? And allowing that. So what had come to me is I was forcing and pushing things on the external. What should I be doing and how should I be doing it, and et cetera. And it's funny because I had done a shamanic journey a while back. I do them regularly. And the image that they gave me is like, you're asking the wrong questions. It's not what should you be doing, is how are you to be, and let that inform what it is that you're doing. So instead of going from the outside in, remember to go from the inside out, because it's your energy that you're putting out into the universe, and then the universe is going to respond in kind. And that is going to inform who enters your orbit, and they will ask you, how can you help me? They're just guided to you. And I think that's for many of us, when we struggle, what should I be doing? And all this stuff, whether it's relationships or jobs or anything like that, it always comes down to the question, like, how are you with you right now? And so that's the essence of how I've been doing, is just really exploring that and opening that up and allowing myself to step into whatever path the universe is also co-creating with me.
It's so nice to be in conversation with someone so intuitive. Sometimes I feel like I have very intellectual conversations, but the way you describe life, I automatically sink into it without any sort of expectations or the way we usually assess people. That's pretty unusual of an experience, because we're still, as we introduce ourselves to each other and then we're catching up with people, there's still an airs of pretense, perhaps, but you're just not someone who seems to be like that. And you've been kind of a content creator, and you've been sharing your world and your lived experiences online for quite some time now. And one thing I was talking to you about is you seem very good about hey, I'm going to do this little project. I'm going to explore this little container. And at some point, you seem to have this way of knowing when this is complete for now, or
Yeah.
maybe it's time to explore something else. And I've seen you sort of iterate in this way. Now, my sense as someone who's multi-passionate as well is that can create a lot of strife and struggle.
Oh, yeah.
But I have it in my head that you're actually pretty good at doing that, because that can be difficult. Think of the people who stay at the job they hate for an extra 15 years, right? Like, I'm just curious for you to unpack some of that, and how have you learned to do that for yourself?
Oh, that's so great. It has been a big struggle. And thinking of how we're supposed to show up, we're in this society that is very much about the one thing, a singularity, a single focus. You take a subject in school, get a job in that space, and you become that for the next 30 years of your life until you retire. And that is a sweater that's always been very itchy for me
Mm-hmm.
to wear. And likewise with you, as you've shared, especially when you're, in a creative and artistic, and artistic is creative, but not all creativity is artistic, right? We know it has been a challenge, because I always kept thinking, what's wrong with me? I keep jumping around. What is wrong with me? Why can't I stay on one thing? I'm not formally diagnosed with ADHD, but I'm ADHD adjacent. I have lots of friends with ADHD who have asked me if I'm one of them. So
Yeah, same.
it's like, you sure you're not one of us?
Right.
And so I jump around, and part of me loves that. But then there's the other part that when I look at sort of, I see everyone else just really staying in that one place. I'm like, oh, again, questioning myself rather than celebrating that. And now I've come to a place where I do celebrate that. And I've had people come to me saying, I wish I could be like that. I wish I could do that. I love watching you
Yeah.
jump from one container to another and explore it and have fun with it and get messy with it and then move on. And to your question, a lot of the times, like, I was a chef for 25 years, and I just woke up one day, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. One day I woke up and I said, I want to start running. And I ended up running marathons and stuff. And then I kind of let that go. I'm back into it again. But I find that I run it, I step into something. It's like I'm called to it. There's something in me just goes, you need to do this now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll step into it, and then I'll mine it for as much as I need to. And then I get a little tug on my shirt saying, okay, you're good for now. And I pull out. And I've never really questioned it.
I mean, I don't want to downplay that,
Yeah.
because I'm somewhat similar in that way. When I wanted to create a podcast, you wind up like learning a bunch of
Yeah.
tangential skills, right? That
Yeah.
you never would have approached or even thought about otherwise. And I've seen you, because you do share, I would say, more openly and vulnerably than a lot of people. You take people through like your journey of learning how to video edit and
Mm-hmm.
come up with discussion topics and engaging with your audience and starting a new like social presence. In any case, I think that for me, that's been a lot of the joy as well. Like, as much as I want to see things like perform well, you want to
Mm.
have acknowledgement or validation or
Yeah.
success. I have immense joy from learning how to do something and then being able to do it. I wonder if that you've had that experience as well.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Like, as you were talking, I'm like, yep, I'm learning. So I'm doing a lot of photography now because I'm writing a book.
Yep.
That is also going to incorporate photography. So I've been really stepping into photography, and I love it. I did it in college, and videos and video editing. And I love, like you said, these skills that naturally come up, because if you want to produce a video, you need to learn how to color correct and all this. And I love that. That's the nerdy tech side I enjoy.
Yeah.
Because someone asked me recently, I've had it, well, why don't you do that for other people? I'm like, no, that would be the death of me. If I were to have to be a video editor or do web design or anything, that would just suck the living joy out of me. I enjoy it because it's helping me and I'm learning something. And then once I have enough information to do what I need to do, I move on.
Mm-hmm.
And I have certain skills, and it's like I'm putting all of this into a toolbox. And eventually this will start to come out at different times. And that's one of the great things about being multi-passionate or multi-potentialite, is that you get to synthesize all of this, and you get to use problem solving in one area and transpose it into another. So you're coming at things from a different perspective. And so I can use some of that tech, nerdy, IT kind of things I know and move it into maybe more of a creative space, or maybe some of the spiritual work and move that into an artist space. And you're just this sort of dance of these cross pollinizations of skills and abilities and spaces that we create for each other. I think that's the magical part. That is the fun about being a multi-potentialite. And that's something that someone who has harnessed everything into one narrow focus, I feel like they may miss out on.
And also very complementary, to be honest. I think people
Yeah.
work differently, and people with wildly different approaches and philosophies can collaborate because they have different things to offer. So you talk about that cross pollination. I think was it Liz Gilbert? It was like the hummingbird or the jackhammer or something like that. She did a talk once, and I was like, some people are jackhammers. When they take
Hmm.
us interest, they will be the jackhammer, but
Yeah.
other people are more like cross pollinators, and that's kind of how they're meant to operate because people are different. But yeah, there certainly can be a lot of challenges with being multi passionate and trying to constantly hold that truth, I guess. Can you give an
Mhm.
example from your experiences of like one part of your life translating or being relevant in a completely different area of your life, or like something from your past life maybe becoming relevant again in a completely different way now?
Yeah, great question. What comes up for me is, being a chef, a culinary leader, and learning in all of those years, learning leadership and self leadership. And so I've been able to take a lot of those skills and abilities and ways of seeing into the present in terms of coaching. I still have some people that are coming to me for coaching around leadership, and CEO level, etc. And I bring that experience, even though it was working in kitchens and hotels and et cetera. I can bring that, but then I also transpose that into self leadership. And how does that? So I'm not talking about a team that you're running. Like, how about for you as a self leader and using a lot of those skills? Another example is addiction recovery.
Yeah.
And so, for me, I'm 14 years sober now, and a lot of the lessons I learned then I can are transposed easily into different situations now.
Mm-hmm.
It could be mindset, it could be emotional work, it can be a shadow work, it can be creativity. Anytime I'm working with someone, and whether it's a friend or a colleague or whatever, I've noticed I bring in a lot of that area of my life, because that really did help me recreate who I was, because I had to recreate who I was.
What do you mean
And
by that?
I always said I drank to wash the me off of me.
Right.
There was a part of me that I just did not. There was a lot of self-loathing
Sure.
and self-destruction. And drinking, they say, is suicide by installment plan. It's just this erosion of yourself, because you can't stand being with yourself. There's so many things that are just just jabbing at you. And so the drinking helps to relieve that, but of course it brings its own problems. And so part of getting sober and getting in recovery is recreating who I was. I had to release so much of these stories, release a lot of that victimhood, release a lot of that self-loathing, and start to not only not hate myself, but to actually start to like myself, and then start to love myself. And I had to recreate who I was and how I saw myself, so that drinking was no longer an option. It wasn't alluring anymore. So it's not like white knuckling. I'm just going to use my willpower. Willpower is limited.
You mean when it comes to
And
sobriety?
yeah, and but this can, again, see, I can transpose this. This can be being in a relationship, being in a job
Mm.
you hate,
Mm-hmm.
being like any of those things
Yeah.
where you want to give up, maybe as a habit that you want to release.
Yeah.
And so it's like, who am I that I don't need this habit anymore? Who am I that I don't need the attention from men? Who am I that I don't need, et cetera, validation? And so you're recreating yourself in a way that those things no longer hold appeal, because they're not part of who you are anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They're not part of your self-image.
I think that process of reinvention is so vulnerable, and it takes like a tremendous amount of courage at the same time. There's a lot about being yourself, especially if you see yourself in a complicated, fish out of water, multi passionate, outside of the
Mhm.
box way. A lot of the narratives around that is very seductive, right? It can be very negative and discouraging and all of that.
Yeah.
And then we get into patterns like what you're talking about, taking outside of the judgment and emotions. It takes a lot of courage to get out of that. It's not easy. And it does make me think about, I guess, connections and relationships as we're going
Yeah.
through our transformation and the different iterations of ourselves. I'm curious, like, have there been like anchor relationships for you, even in these past lives? And if so, why? Right? And what are some relationships or people you know personally, or even an author or something like that, that has really impacted you?
Connection and relationship are so important. My natural inclination is to go the relationship connection to myself first and foremost, right? Anchoring that, or to spirit, source, anything greater outside of myself. If anyone thinks along those same lines, has a perspective that there's something greater than themselves, and that's part of that surrender. And so those are the first most important relationships for me, is connection to self and connection to source. Now, outside of that, I've had family, my wife, just they have been anchors. You've just have me thinking, because most of the other folks maybe back then, I have very, very little or no connection to, because they were connected to another version of me. Now, I do have family and friends who have seen me move through my iterations and the struggles and all that. And of course, they're there, and they've been beautiful to have, and anchoring and solidifying and nourishing in many ways. They were there when I felt like I didn't have myself. I didn't have connection to source. That it was a void. They were like the sails on the mast, just kind of keeping me afloat and guided in some way. So in return, I've been able to give back to them and what they need, and just really making this really strong relationship. Now, as we all develop and step into our next version of ourselves, we will naturally attract other people who are maybe on the similar vibration, similar wavelength, people that you would not have normally have run into because you were at different places. One of the things I recognize, that I know that I've kind of stepped into a new space, is that I'm attracting different people, and you are attracted to other people as well. And you said, authors and stuff. The one person that I really resonate with and I really love is Rick Rubin.
Oh yeah, do you
he wrote the book on
Creative Act, right?
Creative, yeah. It's like almost like a philosophy book. Like you can go in any time, read. The chapters are very short, but it's just almost like philosophy. And I just love how he is more of just a guiding presence. He is like a hub of inspiration. It's not so much as technical. He doesn't know how to work a soundboard. He doesn't really play instruments, but people work with him because it's him. And he knows what he likes, and he's able to push them and able to be that container for them. And so that is something that I aspire to be, that sort of guide. He was out of my off my radar forever. I read the book. I'm like, this is an amazing book and all, but it's only recently, as I've stepped more into this space, that I'm like, I feel like a kinship to him.
Yeah, I think that book really brought a lot of people into his orbit, even if they've heard of him and how prolific he is. It's sometimes with these people, it's hard to high achieving people, it's hard to get inside their lived experience, right? And that was I love that book. I have it here somewhere. But creativity is really, really important to the both of us. I wonder if that's been like an anchor in some ways as you're practicing sobriety and working on yourself and learning self-love. Was that like a factor for you, that to make sure you continue to be seen? Because quite frankly, I know a lot of people who kind of like go into hiding for like 6 months to a year whenever something like this comes up, and then they come back and you're like, something's happened, but you're not sure what, right? But you're a little more of like, no, come on this journey with me.
I used to write a lot. I still do.
Yeah.
Near the end of my drinking career, if you will, I had stopped writing. I stopped writing. There was no space for it. I had given it no more space. And when I got sober, for the first year, I was just focusing on myself and just trying to, sort myself, because that first year is very tough for someone coming off of the kind of career I had there. But then I started to get that itch to write. And it wasn't until I started a recovery blog on like WordPress, that started to kind of get the ball rolling in terms of expressing myself again. And I was very anonymous. I didn't put my name or anything. It was just I was very timid. It was very, very tender at the moment, because it was also starting to be vulnerable. This is really where I started to be open and honest, because everything with active addiction is about secrecy.
Right.
When I started to blog, like I started to open up, and it's been like that. You've mentioned a few times taking people on my journey. That's where it started. That's where that sort of notion of being open started. Was, hey, you know what? I'm struggling here. Come along. And I learned, though, and to this day, I practice is I don't just share the problem. I also share the process and the solution. So it's not like I'm just vomiting, Dear Diary stuff and then just walking away and having people to clean it up. This is what I'm struggling with, but this is kind of what I'm thinking of doing, or this is what I've done, and kind of relating it to the reader or the viewer. And eventually that became a book. And then I started a podcast, and then it just started opening up from there. And to this day, like, it's just constant ideas and allowing myself to be that guide. That's where I feel most comfortable.
The reason why I asked that question about creativity is that I think for a lot of people, unfiltered and freedom to express yourself is a big part of recovery. So thank you for talking about why it was important for you to be that vulnerable and to do it alongside your professional development as well. People feel very either or with presentation versus honoring their identity. But I think for people in recovery and people who deal with sobriety, it's like this has been an ongoing journey already beyond just work or any one relationship, right? So
you're spot on, and I believe it's because those who have moved through addiction have been through hell and back, and they realize it kind of reprioritizes what you focus on. And people who have gone through that, there's an openness about them that you just recognize almost immediately, because or I can only speak for myself, but I know that there's no value in secrecy. There's no value in trying to candy coat things. Like, I present a certain way. Of course, there's some self-containment, right? Like, we're not just bleeding all over the keyboard. Right. There's a certain level of self-containment still, and boundaries, energetic boundaries. But to me, being open just feels very natural.
You've always been that way? Were you like kind of I almost picture you being like, rather than being quiet, maybe you were more of the class clown or something like that.
Oh, no, I was, no, I was quite serious. I was like this A plus student. I got bullied a lot. And I think that really brought me to my knees in many ways, and has echoes to this day of, with the bullying. But in a way, it's been a gift, because it's really had allowed me to work on myself and finding that true self. Because in the past, what I learned was being myself meant pain. And so I hid, and drinking was part of hiding. But now I'm on the other side, where I can still feel, I can still play small. Absolutely. I can still hold back because I'm afraid of getting hurt, but it's less and less. It's still there, but it's less and less. And so it's just stepping into, like, I'm not going to get hurt. You can be yourself, Paul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I thank you for staying on this topic of recovery and sobriety. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but I feel, we, for the past few years, I think there's been a lot of focus on this road for lots of people. And there's still a lot of judgment, prejudice, shame around this topic. Like, one thing you talk about is like, my relationship to myself is really important, particularly for your recovery, to heal some of your wounds and everything. How has that impacted like parenting? I can tell this is a big part of your life. How do you show up, and how do you make sense of yourself as a parent now that you're on this journey?
I'm smiling now because it's been very challenging lately, but I also know I've got 2 teen boys, and there's been some real challenges as of late. And there's times where I'm like, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. Like, I don't know if I can do this. What I've come to learn, and even my guides, my spirit guides have said to me, everything that you have learned, everything that you have gone through is for them. It's for me, of course. But now I'm able to give to them what they need, because I'm in a position that I can do that. And I think at any other time, I would have crumbled, or I would have shied away, or I would have tried to hide. But everything that, I had a therapist say that, when you have kids, you have your second childhood. Like, it triggers so many things. And there's so many things that have really triggered me as of late. But it's because I recognize myself in my kids in different ways, and so it's helping me actually heal even more. And at the same time, I'm able to give to them what they need, in terms of just having that presence, having that guidance, having something up against for them to kind of butt up against, and not get lost in myself and being worried and afraid and all these things. It's been immeasurable for me, because now, as we're starting to get on the other side of some challenges, I'm really happy with how I've been able to be there, and to also, it's like we're kind of healing at the same, like, they're growing and I'm healing at the same time. And so we're on these parallel journeys that are just, they're lovely. They're painful at times. Yeah. I'm just really happy that I'm able to be present for them. And in the past, I wouldn't have been able to.
Raising two boys, I can imagine, is interesting right now because the boy
Yeah.
culture and navigating boy culture, online culture, male
Hmm.
culture,
Yeah.
masculine culture is just, we've been discussing this for forever, it seems. I can imagine you probably have had some thoughts and experiences about around this. So I'm not a
Yeah.
parent. I'm not raising boys. I'm really curious to ask people who are responsible for raising boys your
Yeah.
thoughts around that and how you've been navigating making sure you have a sense of your children even though they're about to go out into this world that's fraught with all of this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an ongoing discussion. Right now, what you do see is I can't remember the term, this where there's a lot of that angry, disenfranchised sort of not quite incel, but just a lot of that unhealthy masculine discourse out there, and that's helping to create another generation of men, young men who are not able to express themselves in healthy ways, who treat women in ways that are unhealthy. It's creating this new and yet old way of a masculinity that is not in any way useful or healthy. I'm not here to blame social media. No, I use social media. It just depends. It's like anything else. It's a tool, but it's like, what are they exposed to? Because I'm the male presence in the house, it's important that I let them know. We've had, since they were young, talks about consent, talks about what it's like to be a man, what it isn't, public perception. It's wonderful having, my boys just understanding that, and I can see how they are with others, and that they don't there's not a sense of bravado or they have to prove anything, that they can be comfortable in themselves and still be strong and still be, there's the distorted view, the unhealthy, the wounded masculine is the bully and the blowhard and the misogynist and et cetera, et cetera. And you can be a strong male presence and still be open and vulnerable and kind. There's a great book, I think we may have talked about it, No More Mr. Nice Guy. And that's a book that I've used many times when I've worked with men, and I have worked on it myself, and the difference between a nice guy and a good man,
Mm-hmm.
and really understanding what those mean, and sharing that. And so that's something that is just, we've been talking about for years with the boys, and will continue as they go out and they're on their own, and what kind of decisions. And again, it comes down to what kind of person, what's your self-image, who are
Yeah.
you? And especially in a culture where society doesn't always allow men to express themselves freely, and because they hold them to just a standard that once we step away from that, people question our manliness. Like, there's a lot that can be unpacked for, for hours. We can talk about that, but it's really just, again, a sense of self, a strong sense of self as a person, as a man, and testing the waters and being that good man. And I had to learn to do that much later in life. Like, I had to learn to do that much later in life because it wasn't taught to me. It wasn't something that was modeled necessarily. My dad is wonderful. I didn't have a lot of other male role models. So now I'm able to give that to them, I hope.
You don't have to go there if you don't want to, but I often think about, was there a moment, particularly as someone who's been on a recovery journey, the barriers around your heart just kind of the dam sort of broke, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I think my preoccupation around my like self-loathing and shame around that really broke open after my grandmother passed, my last living
Mm.
grandparent, and me trying to process that and perhaps find healing from the grief of that really did something to me, like the way I framed life and safety and comfort and courage. I think everything just kind of shifted a little bit for me. That experience was powerful. Obviously there was grief, but I always think back to like there were moments where it was actually possible for me to step out beyond myself and just let the barriers come down. So I share all that
Yeah.
to be like, do you have moments like that? And we've probably all had like multiple, and what that was like.
Yeah. Well, I love that example you gave, and just how that opened things up for you. Grief was there, but then there was like this cracking open of something that,
There was a lot of conflict
uh,
and fights that just didn't matter anymore. Right? My grandmother is still gone. Right? And I think that did
yeah.
something for me or to me. Right?
Yeah, I'm just casting my mind back. I feel that the recovery, yes, getting sober was a huge part for me, because again, it reframed, like you with your grandmother, it reframed the importance and priorities of my life. Having children as well,
Mm.
that does change things up. And I think there's smaller moments along the line. I think you mentioned something like, it doesn't have to necessarily be a big
Yes.
epic
And it doesn't
moment.
have
Like
to be grief centered either. Like, for example, finding out you're going to be a father, for sure, right?
yeah,
Is a moment like that. Yeah.
I can't pinpoint exactly, but there have been times where something has been revealed, whether someone said something, an offhand comment or an observation. It'll have me thinking like, oh my gosh, why am I doing it like this? Or I am a little bit like this, or whatever it is, or maybe something at work triggers something. I remember someone telling me once I was a very straightforward guy. I'm like, I've never been called straightforward in my life. Really? I was always duplicitous and very Machiavellian and
Oh, so when
manipulative.
someone
And
saw something in you that you didn't
yeah,
really even register.
no. And I said, I'm straightforward. Are you
Yeah.
kidding? I used to like twist words into
Hmm.
pretzels and try to will my way through life. But I think the working with the men's stuff had come up in the last couple of years, and to the point where I realized I had feared men. I had feared my own
Hmm.
masculinity, which is why I joined a men's group. Like, it was for a year. I worked with a men's coach and really started to step into that masculine space. And recently, I was telling you offline, getting into the physical now and into my body, and whether it's exercise or breath work, or like really realizing that the body is also part of this whole experience. And I haven't been taking care of this body, like even the drinking. Like, I mean, that was abusing my body. And although I helped to spiritually and emotionally and mentally, the body I still had a resentment towards
Hmm.
it. And so now I'm feeling like that is now part of it, and releasing weight and really seeing myself in a different way.
Yeah.
That has been really monumental as well. So along the way, I think just have these aha moments like, wow, I should really, what am I withholding? What's a part? And I always knew that the moment I started taking care of my body, everything else would also expand, my spirituality, and it's true.
Yeah. I want to just briefly check on time. Do you have a hard stop in 4 minutes, or are you okay?
No,
Okay.
of course.
Because I didn't want to, say goodbye in this conversation without you talking about the book that you're working on and writing, right? You had brought that up earlier. How did that begin? And is there anything that you want to share about that experience?
It was one of those things that just dropped in my lap energetically. Just I was thinking about. I knew I've written one book before, and it was about spirituality and recovery. It's 2017. I wrote that. I was like, I know I have more, and I was trying to think, what is it that I want to do? What is it I want? And again, this is the idea, like mentally trying to force something. I'm trying to think of something rather than allowing something to come into me. And as an artist, as you know, like sometimes it's just when you try to think your way into something, you're throwing up barriers, as opposed to what invigorates me, right? What And one thing I'd been doing online was I would take photos, and I would do like a little, whether it's a little inspirational thing, a mindset piece, a little spiritual piece, whatever it is, based on that photograph. And it's funny, I had lots of people, including published authors, saying, so you're going to write a book on this, right? And I'm like, yeah. And I dismissed them, like, yeah. But they planted a seed. And eventually I started thinking, like, actually, I have really wanted to step more into photography. And I said, what would I love to see? And what came up for me, and I have fleshed it out, is almost like a daily reader, where there is a photograph that will all be mine, and then just have something connected to it. Now I do have it organized in cycles,
Hmm.
in there is a thematic structure to
Right,
it, so it's
right.
not just random, tying in a bit of like maybe some shamanic energy or some spiritual work mindset. Like, it could be a little bit of everything. I'm going to toy with it, but the more I've shared it, like the more it just feels like, okay, that's the one. And it's one of those things where you can turn, doesn't have to be the exact date. You can just turn at any page and you'll find an image and something short. It could be a few words, could be a few paragraphs. And that will
Hmm.
connect. So it's just me kind of a way of just putting out there insights that I've had, any wisdom, any things I want to share. Plus I get to be creative. I get to have fun with
Yeah.
it. It's just a little bit different. I don't, it's funny because I was looking stuff up. I'm like, I wonder if there's any examples of this. I haven't found any really. There's a lot of devotionals, I guess, if you would, or just kind of things. I have one by Mark Nepo. It's fantastic, but nothing with
Hmm.
visuals. And so that's what I'm working on. I'm very excited. And I have about a year's worth of photos now, because their seasonality may play into it. I think so. So I can really now start to filter them out. And, I think in this August, I'm going to actually sit down and write it.
Yeah, that sounds like such a fun
Yeah.
process, as opposed to the traditional imagery of someone brows furled in front of their laptop for like 8 hours a day or something like that. And I don't write like that either. When if I'm not in the mood, I don't force myself to write per se, but also introducing another element, like you were saying, both from the intuitive place and also the photography place. It's so interesting to put these things together. And you probably wouldn't have done that if you hadn't had all these past lives.
Yeah. Going full circle to that whole multi-potentiality. It's a lot of fun, and, the last podcast that I just wrapped up, it was about bringing in my chef stories and really weaving it into other things. And I think that's the key, is just to pull little threads from here, from there, and knitting something, or just, putting something together that captures parts of your past lives into something that's new, and something that is indicative of you, is an expression of your lived experience, into something tangible, or something that you can look upon later on, or you can pass down to someone, or you can share with the world.
Yeah.
Even if you don't write or create in that way, even just how you create your life and how you interact with people, how you interact with nature, how you animals and like whatever it is, like just how you create your life and express it, that too can be very powerful.
My printer just decided to go off, but I was so locked in on what you were saying on how powerful it was. So thank you. It turned on the machinery around me. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And again, just the way that you kind of show up as you are. Many people talk about being able to do that because there's a sense of freedom, right? But to be honest, without doing the work of who are you, it's kind of hard to actually be that, right? So thank you for being that. Hopefully we can catch up next time about the next chapter of your book journey, wherever it takes you and everything. So if people want to connect with you, find you online, what are some ways to do that?
I am on Instagram and TikTok at The Real Paul Silva and therealpaulsilva.com. Doing little videos, doing my stuff. I'm going to rebranding everything. And on YouTube, You Are Gumbo, but I'm going to rebrand that as well. But you'll find me. It's scattered around the Digiverse.
Gumbo. I haven't had gumbo in a long time. Do you make gumbo? Do you know how to make gumbo?
I know how to make it. I haven't made it in forever.
I don't know how Canadians feel about gumbo, but it brings much comfort. Yeah, it's great.
There's so much. I love a lot of the food in the southern U.S.
Yeah,
and you just don't get that here. It's hard to find even the ingredients you can probably find now. It's a lot better now.
Yeah.
But you don't find many places that cook that style of food. I'm like, oh, but it's so good.
I haven't had much exposure, but it's also fairly regional, where like people have their own take, and it's so fun to explore food in that way. But anyway, it's really fun to see you exploring life as well through that. So look forward to whatever comes next for you, Paul. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks for your kind attention, Robert. It's always a pleasure.